is the fact that some of these laws that we passed, are not laws which are inbuilt, that are designed to support local farmers. These are bills which are designed, Mr. Speaker, to create products for other markets, but not really for food sustainability. Mr. Speaker, I want to believe that there'll be a time that as a country, we can start developing regulations that promote sustainability, that promotes cooperative, that promote, building of consensus and also synergy between the farmers, government, and the private sector. One of my biggest pet peeves, Mr. Speaker, with cash crops is that we develop them to be able to feed the overseas market. That is the way, Mr. Speaker, we've been designed as a nation. I'm one of the biggest critics of the World Bank and the IMF, Mr. Speaker, because of the dangers that they are putting us through, because of the slavery mentality, or rather tendency, that they continue inculcating into our culture. People have been talking about the coffee industry for many years, Mr. Speaker. When I was growing up, the coffee industry was really there to support the local communities. In fact, I was having a conversation with one of the clerks, and he said to me, when farmers were growing coffee, when it comes to the time of paying them, some money will be set aside so that at the end of the financial year, these farmers are given money as a bonus. And some of that money will be from their own kitty, money that they saved, to really build sustainability. So, Mr. Speaker, as I read through quickly on the memorandum and object of reasons, these regulations that we want to develop to boost the coffee industry, we now must start thinking outside the box, Mr. Speaker. We must start thinking and saying, how do we build cooperative movements that will be able to ensure that a poor farmer in Kirinyaga, a poor farmer in Nyeri, a poor farmer in Kitale, Trans Nzoia County, and even now, Mr. Speaker, in Narok County, can be able to use that coffee plant, produce it locally, sell it, make the money, but also be part of a government initiative that has developed proper regulations that support that farmer, the private sector, and also to ensure sustainability of that crop. We are lamenting on a daily basis, Mr. Speaker, about brokers, coffee brokers. In fact, if you listen to most leaders from Mount Kenya, when they are raising their concerns about the coffee industry, they will tell you it has been taken over by cartels. But they will never tell you what it is that we need to do. And that is why I believe the senator, or the chairperson of the Committee of Agriculture, Livestock, Senator Murango, has thought that can we now relook at these regulations? Can we come up with regulations that promote sustainability of the crop? Can we come up with regulations that will ensure that these cooperative movements are not overtaken by cartels? And my contribution to this, and I hope that I can have some time to really sit down and discuss with the chairperson on agriculture who has sponsored this bill, being a committee bill, is now to say, how do we do away with all these huge controls by boards, and since agriculture is devolved, we take it to mini cooperatives, give those cooperatives more powers. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the dairy industry today, and I think we can learn from each and every industry. If you go to Githunguri, which I've learned a lot from them, which we are now actually exercising. If you look at Fresher as a company, in Githunguri dairies, they are put together, all the farmers, decisions are made by those farmers. When they sell their milk, they know what they'll get as a bonus if they are to get it. They know when they'll be able to get. They control. In fact, the dairy board, I dare say, goes to them and say, how can we do this better? In fact, the dairy board goes to them and collect that data so that they can go out and say, we have done A, B, C, D in the sector. No, it is those farmers. So I believe, Mr. Speaker, it should be important, not that there is a national body that controls the coffee industry, but that control should go back to the farmers. That control ought to go back to the cooperative movements, the private sector working together. Mr. Speaker, if you look at cotton, not cotton, but cottage industries in this country, today you'll find beekeepers who come together, they produce their honey, and instead of selling it in supermarkets, they now go to weekend markets. You know, they go there, neighborhood markets, and they sell and they make their money. So as we think about legislation, I want us to do away with this issue of formulations of these boards. You're setting up a board. You set up a board, that board will need money to run. It is those farmers who will now be tasked again, and we're talking about taxation here. Every day we lament about the number of levies, the number of taxes that are introduced in this country. The only day that we will do away with those taxes, Mr. Speaker, I dare say, is the time when we start developing legislation not to please the IMF or the World Bank or to create products for the export market, but rather to create products that support sustainability of our small economies. I want a farmer in Kitale to have 2 acres of land. They grow coffee, Arabica. And when they harvest the beans, they can sell, make money. They will be paid some part of that money by a board or rather a cooperative that they form that person is a member. Last year, or last parliament, Mr. Speaker, there was a bill that we discussed here, which was the warehousing receipt bill. That warehousing receipt bill, Mr. Speaker, was thought out very well, that we create warehouses where farmers can harvest their product, go sell them, they get a receipt, they tell them, today's market, this is the price. You can either give you this price, or you can wait until the time when we go sell to see how the market will change, and whatever would have earned more than what we are calculating now, we will give it to you as a bonus. We need to borrow from that legislation so that that farmer who has got 2 acres of land can also say, even if I'm to export this product, I will export it myself as a member of this cooperative. I've got a few pointers, Mr. Speaker, which I had raised, which I just want to highlight on them briefly, because I just put my thoughts really quick. Number one, what I don't find in this legislation, although I support it, is on the issue of prioritization of sustainability development of the coffee sector in this country. We need now to demystify further. We need to go to Trans Nzoia and say, do we have a database of all farmers here who are coffee farmers? If yes, we do, anybody else who wants to become a coffee farmer goes through, gets into that database, and is assisted by that cooperative. Number two, we need to ensure, which I'm not seeing here, and the reason why I'm not seeing here, Mr. Speaker, is because of the issue of setting up a board. This agriculture in this country is devolved. The framers of the Constitution were very clear. They want food security. They want sustainability. They want us to be able to develop our agricultural sector. The only way we can develop our agricultural sector, Mr. Speaker, sir, is to ensure that we develop clear guidelines and regulation for coffee production, processing, and marketing from county to county. I'd be very happy if I come to Nairobi or I go to another big show, which we don't do this often, Mr. Speaker, to see coffee from Narok, coffee from Kitale, coffee from Nyeri, coffee from Thika, and people are competing based on that. And those regulations cannot be uniform, in my view, Mr. Speaker. You know, the only time when you make them uniform is if you want to dance to the tune of the IMF, the World Bank, and the outside world that want you to continue feeding them and not really focusing on your own environment. We need to encourage research. I'm happy that this, one of the objects of this bill is to be able to change the Kenya Agricultural Livestock Research Organization to Coffee Research Institute. Yes, let us set up this research. You know, I love that, you know, but can it be informed by the different environments, different? We have seen, Mr. Speaker, coffee houses, you know, being established as big businesses in this country. It started just a few years ago, maybe a decade ago. But if we are not careful, Mr. Speaker, even those coffee houses will be run, all the profit will be owned by multinational corporations. I dare say right now, the two big coffee houses that we have in this country, because we have failed in educating or illuminating to the public on how important this coffee is, are owned by multinational corporations. There might be a small part of ownership which is owned by local people. But in terms of this research, I wish that there would be some universities which will take up and say, we really care about what we can gain here, so we want to make sure that there is a small research institute. You know, we need to know whether we can market our coffee effectively by blending different beans. We can even start with a blend and say we have got a blend from Trans Nzoia beans. The environment there is different. You know, I'm growing some coffee in Narok. The environment there is different. You know, other people are growing coffee in other areas. Can we blend those beans and say, this is, you know, Rift Valley beans being blended with this other one, and we sell and we make money? Just like what the tea industry has done in this country. Mr. Speaker, I know you are an advent traveler, but everywhere you go, when you go to big hotels, you'll find Kenyan tea, but it's not marketed as Kenyan tea. It's actually marketed as, is it Linton or Lip, whatever it's called? We need this research institute, which I support entirely, must now start looking at it and say, what will it take for us to take the beans from Trans Nzoia? We've got some big farms there. Some of my friends have got big farms there that are growing coffee. And we say, let's blend it with beans from Mount Kenya region. Very, very important, and I hope that one of the reasons why I'm also supporting this is to be able to, these regulations that we are talking about must be able to clearly define the pricing mechanism. What pricing mechanism do we use to be able to market our coffee? If you go to Starbucks, Mr. Speaker, you will find that, you know, Kenyan coffee is not branded or sold as coffee from Mount Kenya, coffee from this area. It's just Kenya. Ethiopia coffee, Ethiopia coffee. But Kenya is different. We're a nation of 45 different nations, you know, different environments. So we need to be proud of that. So in terms of the pricing, that pricing goes also with the issue of transparency and accountability, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the tea sector, people used to trade tea, but all the auctioning would happen in Mombasa. You know, they would take all the tea, they'll get on the train, they'll ride on the train all the way to Mombasa, and they'll auction the tea there. So the pricing will be decided there, based on that auction. Not where the tea is produced. Mombasa doesn't produce tea. So I think it is timely that we look at it. One of the things that I would like us to take away, although, as I said, I'd like us to take away from this bill, is this role of really empowering cabinet secretaries. What we need to be doing is empowering CCs in charge of agriculture in counties. If you look at, as an example, Section 94 of the bill, it says, the cabinet secretary may, in consultation with the board, make regulations prescribing anything that may be prescribed under this act. Why on earth are we giving these cabinet secretaries such powers? Mr. Speaker, I think we need to wake up. And there's normally, as I normally say, we smell the coffee. Agriculture is devolved. Yes, the cabinet secretary formulated policies on different sectors, but we really want to give him so much power such that Governor Mutembei in Trans Nzoia cannot sit with his CEC and go directly to the people there and say, can we work together as a cooperative and come up with policies or come up with a board to make regulations on how we are going to trade, how we are going to make money. Everything must be about making money. We make money, we live well. You know, being poor, and especially now, is one of the most expensive things you can ever have. But it's not that we are poor. It is that our minds are colonized. We do not produce what will help us build our economy. We produce what will help other economies build their own economies. Mr. Speaker, I have, reiterated on this, but let me just add more flesh into it. I think it's imperative, and now I can see my time is ending, that we now need, and this is what I was saying, when we blend, we add value. You know, we can have, just like you have a wine connoisseur, you have the coffee ones. They say when you blend the beans from Trans Nzoia and the beans from Narok, you have this type of coffee. We add value to it. So these regulations must also enhance that. I want to end by saying, because I see my time is running up, that one thing that I don't see here, and I wish that the chairperson can relook into this bill, and I hope that we can talk, so that it becomes neater when at the committee of the whole to change a few things. Because you might bring one, and then politics get in the way. No, we just want it this way. Because there's no bill, Mr. Speaker, that we pass here that has got no interest outside. Most of the bills we pass here are actually sponsored by lobbies out there. And we just come here, we fight for them, and then boom, the lobbies continue making all their money. We need to say, can we promote partnerships and collaborations? Can farmers in Narok, in Kajiado, not Kajiado, because, or maybe, yeah, even parts of Kajiado can also grow coffee. In Trans Nzoia, can we promote this? What do we make it possible? Because we give this Ministry of Agriculture a lot of money. Can we promote partnerships? Can we promote collaboration between the government, the private sector, even civil societies, because civil society do help, and the farmers, to be able to ensure that we leverage the resources and we support the coffee growers. And finally, it is important to monitor and evaluate your progress. So I think one of the key things that is missing in this proposed legislation is the issue of monitoring and evaluating progress. Nothing should be set on stone, Mr. Speaker. I had someone that said that change is constant. The only thing which is permanent is character. So when you are now saying, I've taken this, I'm monitoring it, are people buying it? Are people liking the coffee which is not blended? Are people liking the blended coffee? That should now guide us in terms of how do we develop, how do we add value so that we can ensure ultimately that the farmer benefits. I end by saying all these will work well, Mr. Speaker. For once, if we ensure a fiduciary responsibility, accountability and transparency in every sector that we attempt to develop. Coffee is important, very, very important. The dairy sector is very, very important. The tea sector is very, very important. I think it's about time, Mr. Speaker, that the Ministry of Agriculture should not concentrate most of their time in their offices in Nairobi, but the cabinet secretary, who was a former colleague, should now be going to counties and saying, I get so much money, and this money, it's like I'm just spending it in the boardrooms, or when I come to parliament, I say, oh, we lost 16B when we're importing rice. Why should we be importing? we can develop our own agricultural sector. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. My time is up.
Senator Boni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to support this bill. And Mr. Speaker, I read somewhere that the more things change, the more they remain the same. If you look at, Mr. Speaker, this bill, the objective of the act that we intend to draw from this bill, the objective, Mr. Speaker, is that we have an act of parliament to provide for the establishment of the Coffee Board of Kenya and the Coffee Research Institute to produce for the role of national and county governments, provide for regulation, development, and promotion of coffee industry and for connected purposes. Mr. Speaker, nothing new. This is exactly